I suppose we'll take off. I'll start with my little spiel here. I put a link to the pad in the chat of the video conference here. There you can add topics or add any notes if you want during the call. If you haven't been on this before, this is just an informal conversation between a bunch of us Ceph users in HPC, HTC, I guess big clusters in general. Keep in mind that the meetings are recorded and posted to the Ceph YouTube channel. And just feel free to speak up if you have any topics, thoughts, or anything you want to talk about. I kind of just go through the topics list on the pad one by one, and hopefully that spurs conversation as we go. So the top two things that I always ask is, anybody have any recent outages or hit any serious bugs recently that are useful to be aware of?
Well, based on IRC channel discussions and the MDS issues with the Cephfs is kind of annoying things. At least it sounds like people are having issues when they bringing the MDSs back on a cluster and things like that. I think that someone here had last time some mention about the same kind of issues.
Yeah, I was referring. That was probably me. I was talking about the rejoin step on an MDS can use a lot of memory. We did this again recently, and for an 8 GB RAM MDS, it used something like 60 gigs of RAM when we failed over to a standby. What are they talking about on the IRC exactly?
Well, there is no backlog on IRC, so there was just someone that had some issues with a box. Joni might have some maybe pointers about that, but there was someone having issues with a server, with a cluster which is totally down, and there was MDS related stuff also there. So I was just thinking that
IRC history is erased. But yeah, there was some guy that had some issues with it.
Dan, did that 60 gigs decrease after the switchover was complete, or did it stay steady at that after?
No, it decreases. Because the MDS needs to load every directory that was open beforehand, like the new MDS needs to load all of those.
Sure.
It needs to cache all those inodes. I think there's a fix in Octopus, maybe pending, but maybe released as well for this. Did anyone see for bugs? I think we're planning to upgrade to 14 to 18 soon. It looks pretty good. I don't know if anybody had real big problems with it. There's one known issue with the interface that it binds to. For some people, it binds to the loopback interface because of some commit that changed how Ceph selects which network interface to bind to, but there's a simple workaround for that. But has anybody upgraded already, or is that for later in the agenda?
Talk about it now, it doesn't matter. I was thinking about it as I was looking over the releases last week and everything, and starting to fall a little behind.
We don't have any Nautilus clusters, and we're going Luminous to Mimic to Octopus at the moment. We've done it for the test cluster. So I don't think we're going to land land on Nautilus at all.
Okay.
Our internal schedule is already set that we are trying to upgrade our clusters to that release, but we haven't done any actions yet. I was wishing and waiting that the Swift bug that I was referring already on Etherpad would have got some fixes, because it's been there quite a long time. And even Rafael pointed me about that there's a bug fix on a master branch. It's not point and click solution for Nautilus yet. So the structure for the user tenant is different, and it would require some coding, and frankly I don't have time for making that code change for backporting that bug. So we haven't been in a hurry to push that next release in our clusters.
Dan, why did you decide to go to the last version of Nautilus, not for Octopus or Pacific? Are you worried about it?
Well, we have 5 different clusters, and we are not running. There's a legacy client interfaces that we need to support, and I'm not confident going to like master release or Octopus yet with that system or systems, and that's why I was asking about the mix and matching different versions. So have anyone experience running Rados gateways from Pacific or even master brands, and same time running the full OSD and monitor base on a older environment?
So the upgrade instructions usually have the Rados gateway being the last thing to be upgraded.
I know.
Which would incline me to suspect they're quite picky about version, but I don't know. I've not tried.
Yeah, but there is no concrete rules or anything like that regarding that issue.
On our side, our plan is to upgrade to the last Nautilus, so like 14 to 18, because that will let us immediately do some moving of hardware around that we have. We have some new machines and move a lot of PGs around. And then from there, I think Octopus is okay now, right? I don't have big fears of Octopus. There were some scary S3 things in Octopus, like objects disappearing. I don't know if anyone on this meeting had those issues where the garbage collector was just deleting random objects. But I think this is fixed now. So yeah, I think we would go to Octopus soon.
I think I saw that issue was fixed.
Yeah.
I shoved 10 million objects in the bucket on the test cluster before upgrading it, and they're all still there, so it's not very scientific.
I think this doesn't seem very panicky right now. It seems pretty calm, I would say. There's no one with like massive corruption issues. There's some upgrades going wrong, probably more due to process than bugs, I would say. Rafael, what do you guys run?
We are still in Nautilus. Only backporting some features or bugs currently, and we stay in Nautilus 11, so pretty old. But we are preparing to upgrade our clusters to Octopus or Pacific, but some of our systems are Ubuntu 16. So it's end for them, and we are preparing upgrading the operating systems and then cluster. And currently we are trying to compile Nautilus on Ubuntu 20. There are a lot of dependencies with Python, because in Focal we are the Ubuntu is using Python 3, and Nautilus has everywhere Python 2, so we have to change every line in code or dependency inside the Ceph building process. But in last week, running unit tests, 170 tests and only 4 fails, so it looks promising for us.
This octopus you're saying is prominent.
No,
That's
no,
Octopus.
Nautilus on Focal.
Nautilus, yeah.
Why not do
But why did
Octopus
you
so
say
that uses Python 3 and get past that problem, right?
Can you repeat, Kevin?
What was that? I was just asking why are you doing compiling for Nautilus on Ubuntu 20 and having Python issues when Octopus should do a bit smoother since that's Python 3, right?
Because we have some systems running on Ubuntu 16 and 18, and from 18 it's straightforward to go to Octopus, but from 16 we can't, because it's not compiled by community. And we decided to upgrade all of the operating systems in all clusters to Ubuntu 20, and then upgrade the Ceph cluster to Octopus. We are trying to maintain only one version of operating system and Ceph software, so it will be easier to fix bugs and know what happened in each version.
Okay.
Just, I'm curious. You said that you're also you asked why we don't upgrade to Pacific.
Yes,
I
know.
Were you kidding or?
No, it's going to be stable, maybe, but we will see. As far as I know, they didn't really yet the version, I think, but on the last call stage was talking about 10th of March. Am I right?
Could be.
Yeah, there's some building process woes, at least for some people, on building a Pacific packet. So I don't know what's the real deal there.
Yeah, our internal roadmap is we hope to have our test cluster on Pacific by the end of the year. But we have no plans of it going anywhere near production for a while, shall we say.
No, I think that the people go to Pacific maybe in a half of a year, when all the new bugs will be patched.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't go to Nautilus until 14.2.9 or something, or maybe 8. I don't remember exactly. That's when we first upgraded to Nautilus.
We
And then now
started.
you say we'll go to Octopus at like 10 or 11, I would say.
We started Nautilus with second stable release, and we find the bug corrupting OS disk. So it has to take some time to warm this software on. some dev clusters, prepod clusters before production because there are maybe small change in code, but it can erase data, like this S3 garbage collector deleting.
Well, here at Finland, we are waiting the Pacific kind of official releases, and we will try at least that on our latest hardware, which will be a European HPC supercomputer storage cluster, about 8 racks of storage. So maybe we will hit some bugs, but still we are thinking that would be the way to go with a new fresh installation.
So I think all of us are waiting for your feedback on this new version.
Yeah, you can test it for the rest of us. Thank you.
Yeah, that's just 35 petabytes of data.
Be a very thorough test, and it definitely probably would be easier just to go straight to the Pacific instead of having upgraded versus something shortly after installation anyway. Put a warning sign on it for the users. On the topics, I kind of just threw the Pacific release out there and has a general thing to discuss and some features that were talked about and highlighted from Sage's tech talk on it early in March. There's some interesting stuff in it. I don't know if anything particular people are looking forward to or what. A lot of useful tooling, more Ceph ADM advancements, and just a whole lot of small stuff for performance and improvements, really, is what it seems like.
I think I understood from Sage's talk that Ceph ADM was still not really quite there for big clusters. I might have misunderstood him, but I think he said that its performance wasn't really quite there for big clusters yet. So
yeah, I think
no,
I think you're right. Go ahead.
Less than like 30 nodes will be just fine, but if you go beyond like 60 nodes, the deployment time will be nightmare. I don't have nerves to wait that much time.
I think they said that's coming in Quincy, where like Ceph ADM will talk to like an agent that runs on every node instead of like, and those get pushed up to Ceph ADM instead of doing like some polling method right now. So I think that's supposed to improve a lot, but that's a year off now.
If anyone's used Ceph ADM for upgrades, like how does it know? Like how does it know which machines to update? I mean, let me say that a different way. If you have like rack-wise, for big clusters, we would have like rack-wise replication. Does it upgrade whole racks and restart whole racks at the same time? Or does it always go host by host? Or does anyone know what it does?
Based on my tests, has been doing like LOSD upgrades because it's like containerized, so it does one OSD at a time.
It does one OSD at a time. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it takes ages to do.
Yeah, that would take a while. That would take too long, I think, because then it has to backfill for each one or like recover.
Yeah.
I see.
I thought it just had to restart the container with the new image. Is that not correct for the OSDs? Does it actually have to backfill data for them?
Well, it would recover. It would have to recover the objects that were written to while that OSD was restarting.
Yeah.
Okay.
In my test cluster isn't so busy, so it didn't do any backfilling. But most of the time it took to do it was like 2 or 3 days that it did the upgrade for 64 hosts with 2 or 3 OSDs.
Were you containerized before you did the move, or does it force containerization onto you?
It was a fresh install with Ceph ADM.
So it was already containerized. So
Yeah.
if you don't have a containerized system, is it going to move you on to using containers?
Might be, yeah.
Ooh. There was quite a thread on the user list the other day talking about this. And
yeah, I hadn't meant to stir it up quite as much as that.
Bring it on, Matthew. I saw that and I had the thumbs up the whole way because we really like to keep everything really simple and so we can see what the OSDs are doing. And we don't use containers hardly anywhere in our infrastructure. We're scientists and we just got lots of data, like probably you guys, but it adds another layer of abstraction which complicates management from our perspective. And I was depressed this morning trying to use Ceph deploy on an Alma 8 Linux box and finding it wouldn't work. And I've got to throw all my nice, comfortable toys out of the pram and start again. But anyhow. Yeah,
so
Sorry.
I've got a question there as well. So with the new version, do you have to use Ceph ADM or can you control it by some other means? So we're using Nautilus on managed Linux systems, and we don't use Ceph deploy either. So we've got our own scripts to do all that. And yeah, if we had to change too massively, that might be quite tricky for us.
No, I mean, I think you can still use Ceph Ansible or any other mechanism. I don't think there's an expectation you must use Ceph ADM or Ceph deploy or anything like that, at least not in Pacific.
And it seems like there's a bit of still a hesitation from a lot of us in big clusters to use containers for everything.
Yeah, definitely. I can try containerized dev cluster with our fresh 8-rack setup, but I'm pretty sure that we don't put that on a production because we've been having issues during the years, and debugging containerized environment is pretty hard if there's a real big issues on a hardware level. The abstraction layer, additional abstraction layer between the hardware and the Ceph cluster will give us maybe too much complexity with the scale that we are installing the systems. For small scale, like 15 node dev cluster, why not? And that size is nowadays rather big if you put that all SSDs or NVMEs, and 15 nodes is pretty fast and decent system.
Yeah, I have actually, I'm running a 12 node cluster and using the Ceph ADM tools from Octopus right now. And it's been working pretty well for us so far. I think the biggest issue we had was that maybe one of the versions had too many logs generated within the container. It might have had like a debug mode on where it's just creating lots of logs, and so you'd have to restart the containers periodically to clear them. But I think that's been fixed.
what is the size of the disks or OSDs on your cluster?
There are 16 disks that are 14 terabytes each.
Okay, so how about the memory usage on the container per OSD?
I'd have to look. I didn't think that the overhead for the memory was substantial for ours still compared with what we have on the nodes. I can pull up what we actually are running for the nodes. So we have these nodes have 256 gigabytes of memory on them total, and they are 16 core CPUs.
Yeah, but what is the utilization of a memory on a certain OSD when you're containerized like 14 terabyte disk?
I will take a look.
Because I'm pretty sure that, well, we are running bare metal OSDs, and we've been having issues with the memory constraints earlier. For example, this we had a downtime, and there was some issues with the PG lock that growth too fast or too much, and it required a lot of memory on those nodes. So that's why I'm interested about the containerized OSD memory footprint.
Yeah, I'll check and I'll try to get back to you on that.
So I'm actually curious, what's the reasoning behind containerizing Ceph?
Just to have a easy, so you're not so OS dependent. So you can have everything's all your libraries are there. There's less variables involved in running your daemons. Yeah, it makes troubleshooting easier for the developers because they know how the image was built. It's not, somebody's cluster that could be built in any way with any number of variables involved. I get it. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I do get it.
I was checking on the OSD, and I think each of the OSDs is using 4 gigs of memory.
4 gigs. That's quite low still on the size of the OSD disk size. What kind of I/O you're running? librados or Rados gateways or?
It should be Rados, but we're running it with a Cephfs on top.
Okay.
Yeah, but memory, remember, is limited by OSD memory target parameter in configuration. So it is this value adding the value of level 0 for RocksDB.
Yes.
It looks like somebody wanted to talk about the manager and the balancer steering and whatnot.
Did we jump into did we mention already the Ceph month thing?
Oh no, sorry, that was under the thing. Yeah, so another thing from Sage's Tech Talk was he talked about the instead of doing a Ceph-a-con, obviously this year it isn't really possible. They're doing a Ceph month. we're trying to do a couple, 2 or 3 talks a week instead of burning people out on, Zoom meetings, basically. It sounds interesting. I haven't seen any requests for talks from people yet.
Yeah, it's still in the planning phase. It was discussed at the last Ceph board meeting. And do you guys like the idea? Is the idea favorable to just do 1 or 2 days a week? Maybe 1 or 2.
Well, that's better than nothing. For example, I really regret that there was some kind of small pandemic in globally that delayed my flights to South Korea, Cephalocon.
But let's say, given the alternative between a week sitting in front of Zoom or 3 days, or doing it over the whole month, which would you prefer?
I have to admit, not sitting in front of Zoom all day. I spend too much time in front of Zoom already. So I think from that point of view, given there's no need to have everyone together, and so, the need to put it all in one day, I think actually spreading it out and not having so much Zoom fatigue in a day is quite a good idea, actually. That seemed like quite a good idea.
Yeah, I'm currently one of the most heaviest user in Zoom in our company, so I don't have extra time for a month Zooming, for example, with the Ceph, even though I would like it. But I would add something more to that. The IRC channel is like single thread, and well, Ceph is not single thread. We have a lot of threads, right? And what if along that we have some kind of Flowdoc or Rocket Chat or some discussion board with that Ceph Zoom days, so we could discuss about different topics on a threads afterwards with that Ceph month.
Which tools did you say?
Rocket Chat or Flowdoc. Well, in Europe, Rocket Chat and Flowdoc are like US Slack, right?
I don't know. We use Mattermost at work. We have our own.
Yeah, you have. Sorry, I forgot that. But that's also one option. So
okay, so just to have chat rooms.
Chat rooms with a threading, so you can go with that thread. That I'm really interested about this discussion related to Blue Store acceleration, for example, and it led to different thread. Even though the original speak was like how to handle nodes. So
okay, yeah, I can bring that to the. There's still, because we're still it has not fully formulated this idea, so that's good feedback. But the other question that they had is should there be a call for papers and should there be a general call for papers? Do you think it would be really popular to have people submitting talks, or should it be each day maybe one developer, a CephFS developer presents what's new in CephFS, and maybe 1 or 2 users present some related talks in that area? How do you think it should be a regular call for papers, or should it be maybe the board picks known people and invited talks, let's say? What do you guys think?
I think it should be a call for papers because the board doesn't know all the interesting stuff people are doing offhand. Because there could be new groups out there other than the same faces that we keep seeing every couple months, basically.
Yeah, and there should be a marketing that you should put your call for that. If you have a good paper, even if it's not the best paper that you can get, but if it's still something if you are dealing with the genomic area and you have a certain genomic pattern that you need to feed on a Ceph cluster, you are using this kind of speed up parameters and make sensitive data secure way, and that might be a good, but it will go on a outside the radar quite easily if there is not enough examples marketing that we kind of are interested about how people are using the Ceph as a tool for their things, and
Are you saying that there should be,
marketing for the call for the paper is really important.
so when you say marketing, do you think that there should be like voting on the paper on the proposed topics? Because I think
I know,
in a normal Cephalacon, we would have many tracks and many papers or talks.
yes.
But we probably won't have the same capacity for Ceph month, right? We won't have room for like 50 talks, I guess. I don't know. I don't think so. So should we have people voting, or should like how, or do you think we should try to have as many as possible and people can, we could have parallel sessions and do like a regular conference, but
I think you need some sort of review. I don't think it needs to necessarily be a popularity contest, but presumably the Ceph board know enough people who know about Ceph to be able to review the proposals.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great, that there's some review. And of course, we can have a backlog for other proposals. So in case you missed something that you didn't hear here, we can set up next Ceph months for example, in August, or if this is on a May. So
it should all be recorded and probably posted to the YouTube.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it could be also useful, even in like at my university, they do virtual like flash talks for an hour session, and 4 or 5 people give 10-15 minute talks. I know sometimes you see that at the conferences, and I think I've seen that at Cephalacon before, but I mean, that format can also be done virtually, and if people don't have 30-40 minute talk, do a flash session for an hour with a few people or something.
yeah, like 2-minute papers. You have time for a coffee and watch that, and then if you're interested about more about that, you could go on a thread on a chat room, discuss more about people that are interested about same tasks.
Okay. I'll bring that feedback to the next board meeting where they're going to discuss this thing. But actually, while we're on this topic of like community thing, maybe I could bump up another thing I had at the bottom. At the last board meeting, I was also saying that this meeting that we have is like really, I personally find it really nice, and also to chat to different operators and share experiences. Do you think that this kind of concept should be opened up to wider users, like not just scientific, like maybe expanding this meeting or maybe having another meeting call where that they could host, they just have informal chat between operators? You're probably a biased audience because you're all at this call.
Yeah, I think having some sort of shared focus is quite useful, I think. I mean, this call sort of grew out of a meeting at the Cephalacon, if I remember rightly, where we thought it might be useful for running in a similar sort of problem space, if you like, to catch up from time to time. And I think maybe that topical focus is quite useful. That's not to say you couldn't have other similar meetings with slightly different topical focuses.
Yeah, I agree. Having like the shared topic is nice, but for like another group, like if they wanted to split off and do like a cloud users where they focus more on RBD or usage or I don't know, whatever. We'd have to figure out what those topics are and see if there's a community enough within the Ceph community to want to get together every once in a while and discuss this.
Okay. Bring that feedback also.
Yeah, I think these are great, and we've kind of hit a nice format of every 2 months, and other users in general could take advantage of such a meeting. All right, so what was I going back on before we got way off? The manager balancer steering. Just reading the notes here.
So I'm, for example, using a CERN script to up-mapping clusters, or if I'm bringing one host back on a cluster that has been broken, for example, I can bring the OSDs up and then just put the no backfill on, run the script, and then my cluster is healthy. That's great when you have a lot of stuff going on, but it's a bit annoying that if you have upmap manager process running and it sees that, well, I have one host full of like 4% of pages on a misplaced, it will try right away, put them all in a queue, and then my pre-up mapping is kind of wane. It's taking them on a backfill state again quite fast. So I was just thinking that if anyone has a more sophisticated way of steering that balancer process when you are adding a lot of capacity on a cluster. Because
you can, normally what we do is there's a thread on this right now on the thing. We add machines to a cluster with initial weight 0, and then we just increase either gradually or all at once. But like, depending on which Ceph version you're running, there's always like different bugs involved,
yes,
in whether or not the data moves transparently or not. Lately, we've been adding whole hosts, which is like, let's say 1/8 of the cluster. On an 8-host cluster, we've been adding one new host, and we just let it go, and we let the balancer go. We haven't been using upmap remapped for adding new capacity lately. We just set the crush weight slowly up to the real weight.
We tend to just stick machines back in the cluster and let it sort itself out. But we have our recovery parameters tuned quite low, so it takes a while. But we've not seen any problems from that, and it's simpler, which suits me.
Okay.
Kind of do the same thing. It's just add it and slowly weight it in, or if I'm feeling brave that day, I'll just add the full weight and let it rip.
Yeah, well, that was just for the discussions. If you have some fancy ways to do that, kind of bringing nodes heavily on a cluster. Well, I've been using the upmapper Python scripts. I think that's one of the best takeaways that I got from Berlin Cephalocon. Okay. For the next bullet point about the Beast Civet Web experience, in our side we are still running Civet Web on a certain clusters, mainly because it was there. We haven't changed that, and we didn't see on that user load much change about the performance. But on some environments, I would go with a Beast if possible, because it's
Yeah, I mean, I was asking this because we've moved our test cluster to Octopus, and our production one is coming along later, and I'm sort of wondering whether to stick with Civet Web that we know, or look at moving to Beast. And I don't know if, I was just wondering if anyone's had any experiences.
We moved to Beast back in near the end of Luminous when it was still experimental, and we didn't really. It was almost like no change. I don't remember any massive improvement or any big bugs. It just sort of worked.
We switched to Beast the last week due to the bug in coroutine stack. And after switching in production, we observe very little performance improvement, but nothing more challenge. Latency is the same on object access.
I guess that sounds like we should probably give it a go and not expect much to change.
yes.
Fair enough. I mean, particularly if it's the default in Octopus, so there's an argument to run it just for that.
I think in only the huge loads, the better is Beast because it has better I/O engine because of asynchronous queue, and I think you should try to kill the Rados gateway with requests, and then you will see the difference between Civet Web and the Beast.
Yeah, I probably have to wait till the next holiday period before I can get away with really killing the Rados gateway.
What about something came up in our meetings recently? They were asking, actually, they were surprised that we still allow HTTP, plain HTTP on s3.cern.ch. Do you guys force HTTPS or do you allow HTTP? Personally, we keep HTTP enabled because if you have applications streaming at, like, if you want a user to be able to stream at gigabytes per second, you can't. I don't think you can encrypt that fast. Like, I find that there's a throughput limit. And I did an OpenSSL test this week, and like one CPU can encrypt at 300 megabytes per second only. So am I like speaking nonsense here? And has everyone switched to secure? Or
we switched to secure, not least because a lot of our use cases, people are sharing signed URLs and external sharing, and we didn't want to have the risk of people using the wrong protocol by mistake. And so we now auto promote as well. So if you connect, for a while we had no listener on port 80 at all, and now we have an promote in HA proxy. But we have dedicated Rados gateway machines to do the TLS and that sort of thing. And we can get fairly good performance out of them flattening the CPUs on the Rattles Gateway machines. But we've got 6, so.
Yeah.
We only use secure connection while accessing private buckets. On our public clusters, we use plain text because they hold data that are publicly okay, so we don't have to secure them.
When you choose HTTPS, can you force the cipher to match the built-in AES 256 instruction sets on the CPU? Because maybe that 300 megabytes a second means you're not using the actual CPU acceleration for encryption.
I have no idea. When I Google around, I found that there's a website called "Is TLS Fast Yet?" or something like that, and it gave me some OpenSSL commands to run. And it seems like they've focused on making HTTP they've focused on the latency aspect. Like now there's you used to have to retry or something. I don't know how this works, but you used to have to used to be many hops or many back and forth to actually negotiate the connection, and now it's zero RTT or something like this. But anyway, they focus on the latency, but not the throughput aspect. And I mean, our Rails gateways are running 10 gigabits. They have 10 gigabit interfaces, and I would just be curious to know if people can saturate with HTTPS at 1 gigabyte per second from one Rados gateway, all secure.
Just trying to find the last lot of benchmarking I did.
I think that when the Civet Web Beast option came for running Beast, there was a throughput limit that at least with the Civet Web you couldn't go beyond a certain amount of speed. It was 500 megabytes or 700 bytes per second.
So with our Rados Gateway service, the last time I benchmarked it, we got 12 gigabytes a second read performance, which that's off 6 gateways.
12 gigabytes per second with okay.
Gigabytes, not gigabits.
Yeah. Well, that's impressive. And that's all secure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I spent some time tuning because there's HA proxy in front, which gives us some reliability. And I spent a bit of time tuning how much CPU we give HA proxy and how many threads we give Civet Web and the number of Rados handles and that kind of thing. And that made quite a difference to the performance we could get out of it.
So you have a Civet Web like on a HTTP, and then you have a HA proxy, which is taking care of the HTTPS.
No, the Civet Web does HTTPS too. Because the way the network is, we wanted to have the HA proxy might not be on the same machine as the Rados gateway it's talking to, but we want to keep that traffic encrypted. So the TLS termination is done by the Civet Web process. And at that, with that benchmarking, we were basically using all the CPU on our Rados gateway systems. That was the limiting factor, but it took a bit of tuning to get to the point where we could use all of the CPU available.
Would you share your benchmarking scripts at some point? I would like to test.
We use Cosbench, which is it's all right. It's a bit of a pain to get going, but it was like a sort of canned answer. I've got my notes of exactly which parameters we used for Cosbench. I can try and fish that out.
Dan, did you ask about performance on secured connection on without?
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking about performance on secure connection. So let's say one Rados gateway. With one Rados gateway running, like what kind of throughput can you get to that one Rados gateway?
Year ago we tested, but unsecure with many Rados gateways, probably 12. And from this multi-petabyte cluster, we get over 200 or 250 gigabits per second. But it's without TLS.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's all just parallelized. Maybe I have like 32 cores. Maybe they would just all be, the cores would be doing this in parallel for each connection, but single streams would be second, which is probably reasonable. Yeah, maybe I'll try again. I mean, we're kind of having a internal discussion about this, and I want to make sure that the facts are, I'm not saying nonsense, you know. Anyway, thanks.
The next thing was MDS being CPU bound.
Oh, sorry, that's me. Well, we had an incident like February 18th where Cephfs got really slow for everyone, and we don't really know why. And by slow, I mean like it took 10 seconds to create a file. And then we kicked out some clients, and we don't really have very good monitoring to know which clients are being heavily loaded. But the whole time we noticed that the MDS was like just spinning, like the CPU usage was flat, 140%. So I guess we've known for a long time that the MDS is single threaded. But I'm just wondering if there's anyone else that's running like big Cephfs that notices this. And do you have you already been through a cycle of testing and tuning and getting the best possible MDS optimized hardware? And then the second thing is like, is anyone aware of developments to make the MDS multi-threaded so that this limited by the gigahertz on your CPU? I'm pretty naive to the whole subject, so if anybody has anything, please share.
This is like off topic, but it sounds really like cluster development 5 to 10 years ago. You have MDS problems and things like that.
Okay.
I'm afraid for us, Cephfs is still one of those we should look at it things rather than something we've actually got deployed anywhere.
Yeah, okay.
We use Cephfs for our HPC work, but we're quite lucky in that most of the files we deal with are microscopic images, which are sort of 100 meg and upwards in size. So we only really need a single active MDS on a 5 petabyte cluster, but certainly it works very well for us. You know, it's not quite up to BGFS, which is what we use for the small file stuff, but it's certainly very, very usable.
So we just recently started using Cephfs for all our school storage. So that's from home directories to large files. So it's a whole mixed bag, and it's all pretty much straight out of the box. And we've got a single MDS, and it just works. So basically, our for general usage, it just doesn't sweat really.
That's really interesting. How many clients are mounting that?
So clients. So we've got AutoMount set up, so individual home directories get mounted via AutoMount and all the various things. So I think we've got about 900. All right. I think so. I think it's 900 clients, something like that. And yeah, it just, so at some stage I wondered if we should have multiple MDSs, and I just noticed the load goes up, and figured, well, actually, I will deal with that if there's a problem. But yeah, it just works. So okay, I did notice once it slowed down for a little while, I think some people copied a lot of stuff around, and the cluster was quite busy. But otherwise, it's fine.
By the way, so if you're using it for home directories, does that mean that those 900 machines, like you're root on those, but the users are not root? Is that right?
That's correct, yes. Well, yes. So it's not
Because you
900.
have, I'm asking about the CephX key. You can't let the users get the CephX key,
So,
right?
yes, that's correct. So we have split up our system. So we use managed Linux systems. So we are a bit odd and use LCFG. But so all the machines inside the server room are trusted. So we've got general compute boxes, multi-user boxes, remote desktops, and so on. And so we have one client per mount, and that's mounted CephFS. And then outside the server room, we deliver the home directories via Samba and NFS. But we probably get rid of NFS if I get around to that.
Yeah. We use the CephX keys to export some of the CephFS directories for people who've got instruments that they need to write directly to Ceph, and that works quite well. And we're doing a bit of experimentation with the Windows driver on a test cluster. Again, because we've got capture devices which run Windows, and Samba tends to bottleneck a bit on write speeds for us. But on our testing, we've been getting 800 megabytes a second writes from a Windows machine using the Ceph Dokken driver, and they've recently added CephX to that, so you can just export a folder from CephX to a Windows box, which I think is quite interesting, and it's really going to maybe open up a way of storing some of the images which we capture. But
You give like a single, so you create like a shared directory or something, and you give them the CephX key, and then they mount it directly from
yes,
Windows?
yeah. Well, you just create a key for a subdirectory and give it to them, and then they can't mount the root of the cluster or do anything nasty. So it just seems to work quite well.
Kind of project area, I guess. I don't know. That's what we call that. Okay.
Yeah, well, on the people who've got Linux boxes who have their own root, we've got a handful of those, and we trust them with the CephX key, but it's not the root CephX key. It's just their home directory key, effectively, and so they can access it from the cluster, and they can access it from their own box. And as long as we know they've got a fairly up-to-date client, and they're not going to use some Neolithic version of Ceph, then we're reasonably confident. It's just a handful of cases, but it works for us.
And they don't, yeah, okay, so a handful. So they can't, they can't like access their friends' files, right?
No.
Yeah.
It's just
no sharing this way, yeah.
You're not showing the root. We're just, here's the key for your directory and your subdirectories. And we've had somebody who wants to do their own Samba server for their own group, and well, why not? If it's from your subdirectory tree, and you're not doing much else, it works. It's good.
Okay, thanks a lot.
I do have a question on CephFS for other CephFS users. From some of our clients, they're generating a message that says clients failing to respond to cache pressure. And I was wondering if you'd seen something like that and if there was a workaround. I believe that's caused by the MDS server trying to compress its memory cache or trying to shrink it down. and then the clients are holding on to some files?
I think you can increase the memory limit on the server, which makes it shut up to a degree. I think the MDS is being a bit chatty. That's my own take on it, and we've never seen anything really nasty happen as a result of it.
Yeah, it just uses more memory than it is supposed to. So we do see that. So for NFS, we use Ganesha NFS. And the problem seems to be that Ganesha does some caching of metadata itself. And so it's holding onto bits. And when the MDS tells Ganesha to release some bits, then it doesn't respond to that. And yeah, I just muted that particular complaint. So the machine that runs the MDS has plenty of memory, and it's fine.
There are a couple of like buggy cases. Like Ganesha does that, and also if a user mounts CephFS and then lists and like ls the directory and then mounts CephFS again on top of it, then like for some reason those caps, those bits in the original, the outer CephFS, they never get released, the MDS. So the MDS will ask for those to be released, but they never get released. So there's weird things like that can cause this. But otherwise, yeah, it means that the client is, usually when we see that, the client is really busy and they're statting a lot of files or creating a lot of files, and the memory on the MDS is too low. So he's asking the client to call back to like drop some of its cache, but that client is allowed to do what he wants. There's no throttle on the client. So he just keeps grabbing more caps. But this is all, actually in 14.2.18, there's a new throttle related to this. Maybe I can find the pull request. There's now if a client asks, so there's a max number of caps per client. By default, it's 1 million. You can decrease this if you don't want clients to cache so many inodes. But if a client, with this new throttle, if a client is reaching that limit and it's not like recalling back, then the MDS stops giving him more caps. He slows down, like, so that client would then start suffering. His LS would slow down. I'm going to try to find they just wrote a documentation for that after the release was released. So I'll add that to the minutes, to the minutes of this call as soon as I find it. Might be quick.
Okay. Oh, thanks for
so maybe one feedback for everyone. Yeah, so I've got some other issues with ZFS, probably not having to do with the MDS getting exhausted. For me, when I'm running Ceph mounted into Linux on a file system with a lot of snapshots, then I'm having this very weird behavior that sometimes for some actions in only some subdirectories, the client itself is exhausting the CPU. Multi-threaded up to the whole CPU that the machine has. If I'm mounting instead with the fused client, then everything is working fine. Metadata operations is of course about a factor 10 slower compared to the kernel client, but apart from that, I'm not running into these issues that the whole machine is hanging. So that's rather weird, but it's probably caused by the fact that I'm running multiple hundreds of snapshots in disjunct directories in the CephFS. That's something that I'm going to change during the Easter days now.
We find it quite important to use fairly recent kernels to get the best performance out of CephFS. So some of the stock Red Hat Enterprise 7 kernels were suboptimal, and we ended up using some of the ML kernels from to get a better Ceph kernel module in place, and that improved performance for us.
Yeah, I actually tried the ML kernel as well, and I could sort of replicate the problems. It's really only some directories. And just for a test, one very problematic subdirectory, I just moved it over to a pool which is not sharing snapshots with the main ZFS data pool, and then the problems immediately went away. So it's definitely got something to do with just the number of snapshots I'm having on the pool.
How many snapshots are you using?
It's currently around 600 to 700 snapshots. Yeah, that's the mistake. The mistake I made was in the beginning. So I'm very new to Ceph, so I was just using the sub-volume abstractions from OpenStack, although I'm not using any OpenStack at all. And I have multiple. I'm migrating currently from an old installation that is just using iSCSI XFS for home directories for different work groups here with different quotas. So I was doing different subdirectories for each of the home directory subtrees, more or less, and wanted to do around 50 to 60 snapshots for all the home directories. And since they are not since snapshots are not supported in sub-volume groups, I just had to do them for each sub-volume themselves, and that just adds up. That's something that I'm going to change in the next few days by just migrating everything into a tree that is more or less completely ignoring the OpenStack abstractions, and then just moving snapshots directly level higher.
We limit ourselves to about between 30 and 60 snapshots on the whole file system, and we've never had much of a problem with it. The dragons are there.
Yeah, likewise. We've got 3 weeks worth of snapshots, and we do nightly snapshots, and that's no issue at all. So.
Where do you do the snapshots? Like just in the root or in user directories or?
So the way I've set up, so actually the most difficult bit for our system was deciding how to split up the ZFS. And I decided to, at the top level, I've got scratch and backed up directories, backed up everything underneath, backed up, gets shipped off every night. And we've got different snapshot schedules at those top levels. So the backed up directories get snapshotted every night for 2 weeks, and the scratch one every night for 1 week. And that's just done at the top level. And it's super nice. It's really cool. Our users love it. So that seems to be the main issue, that someone deletes a file and realizes it, and then now they can get it back themselves. So good.
Yeah, we have a sort of similar idea, but we do snapshotting on the root of the file system. But we also have a second cluster, and we have a whole lot of home root scripts to do a type of geo replication for backups, and we keep snapshots on the backup cluster for about a month. And we only keep a very limited number of snapshots in the primary cluster. So we're looking forward to the CephFS proper geolocation stuff coming in Pacific. So we can get rid of all our hacky scripts.
I mean, it sounds anyway that, I mean, you guys, so I've been afraid to enable snapshots because of all the snap trimming like load that gets created, but it sounds like you guys are happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, the snap trimming, it's just another load you get on the cluster, a bit like balancing. It's one of these things you just need to keep an eye on, and it doesn't get out of hand, for us. We probably have about between 5 and 10, sometimes 20 terabytes of data being snap trimmed out a day, but for us it works fine.
Done. As a side note, you have already one paper for the thing. If you just squeeze down all this discussion about CephFS and snapshotting.
Probably.
Yeah, 45 drives were released a sort of a Geo Replication tool as well, which is based on C, I think, but it calls rsync. It's a bit rough around the edges, but so there are some people out there trying to do something. We wouldn't release our scripts because they are like granny's knitting. You know, they're very messy, but they work.
I've been really interested in setting up snapshotting on our cluster, but I've been a little bit tentative on starting this just based upon warnings and worries about instabilities. And it's interesting to hear because it sounds like these snapshots are over large sections of the file system, and so they would be covering like hundreds of terabytes of data, and that's working. But just maybe avoid having too many snapshots at a time sounds like the recommendation.
Yeah, I think avoid too many of them. They're supposed to have been stable since Mimic. So there's been a lot of code under been written since and been tested. So we've never seen anything go really badly wrong with them.
I think the warning was that it doesn't work with multiple file systems. So you can only have one Cephfs and snapshots.
But I think that's been fixed now. It's down to the file system ID or something, and I think that I thought that had been fixed. But yeah, we only use one file system, per cluster.
Yeah.
That said, I think I would like to use multiple file systems per Ceph cluster to avoid these kind of. I would like to give big users their own dedicated MDS without relying on like directory pinning, subtree pinning, because subtree pinning works really well, but it brings another kind of category of problems when you need to like upgrade. You need to decrease always down to one MDS to do the upgrades, and this is always painful.
Yeah,
I did see that multi is now in Octopus. It's fully stable. They're calling multiple Cephfs.
Well, we like the idea of using multiple file systems, so we could have an erasure coded pool for bulk data and an replicated pool for small file I/O or something like that. Because most of our data is just erasure encoding, so that would be interesting too.
What is your size of erasure coded system on a Cephfs?
So we use 8+2 encoding, and the raw is about 5 petabytes. So we get about not far off 4 petabytes usable of it. There was some guys at NASA who were using erasure encoding at Ceph Barcelona I spoke to, and I think they were using 8+2 as well. It seems a good balance. We would use 8+3, but we have a replicated cluster to store everything on, so that sort of covers my paranoia, is that we've got a second copy of the data elsewhere in the building.
Because it depends on what erasure coding you're running when you're talking about the capacity on that scale.
Yes,
That's
yes,
why I was interested. Thank you.
Yeah, we're using 7+2 for erasure coding, and we did try to compare 5+2, 6+2, and 7+2 for their performance when we first set up the cluster, and they all seemed pretty similar. And then we have 10 nodes at the start, so that limited us to 7+2.
The last thing on the topic list was just a generic CentOS 8 stream thing if anybody wanted to talk or gripe about that and stuff. That or the alternative, was it Rocky Linux would be the new CentOS is what it sounds like.
To say that CERN and Fermilab are working together to come to a decision between them. Because, I mean, CERN and Fermilab used to do scientific Linux, as you probably know. And then we just went with CentOS 8. So now, like, together they'll find a common solution. But there's some kind of committee of like 50 people or 100 people even, I don't know exactly, that are all putting forward all the different use cases. But
Interesting.
in fact, like for operations, like so when I say, for like Ceph, running a Ceph cluster, it seems we'll probably just use Stream. I mean, we'll try and we'll see if there's any. We'll see what kind of problems we find. But our Linux team at CERN is going to. They've already given us an upgrade path that we just like set one thing, and then next time we yum update, we get the Stream repos.
Do you have some kind of snapshot on a Stream repos on your site, so spacewalk or things like that for?
Yeah, they will. So the details they'll be worked out, but they will definitely do like a QA thing where they mirror upstream. They put the upstream mirrors into like the next week's version, and you can have a few QA machines getting the latest RPMs, and then if everything looks okay, then you can just roll ahead next week. All of your machines will get it, or like actually they use CephFS for this. They put all these yum repos in CephFS and they do snapshots with hard links. They have this tool that does for each day they take a snapshot, like a hard linked snapshot with the date in the directory name. So if people want to have the state of the yum repo at this exact date, then they can do that. So this is the use case that kills our CephFS. Because they have really like, I don't know, 75 terabytes and millions and millions and millions of hard links and files and hard links and deleting them and trimming them, and it's a big mess. Anyway, it works.
Yeah, we're a Ubuntu shop, so we're not changing anything.
You won't change the Stream?
Yeah, we're in the process of moving from SL7 to Ubuntu at the moment, so I guess that's probably where that's headed for those reasons. Although I don't know. So we get our Linux to a large extent from informatics, and we'll do what they do basically, because.
I think I'll end up just going with Stream and running a month or two behind whatever the latest thing on the serious breaking bug that needs to be patched. Unless anybody has anything else you want to bring up or say, we can call it a day here. All right, cool. Next one, May, whatever the fourth Wednesday of May will be, I'll send out my usual Ceph.io users list. And if you have put your name and contact information into the pad, I send also a private email to the group along with a calendar event in it. So if you're not on it and you want to be on it, add your information and list. Other than that, thanks everybody. This was a great conversation today. Take it easy.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.